Guess what, guys? I have a new auto launch, and it's specifically a Kevin, come here. It's a Kevin-inspired launch. Oh, look at this sweet baby boy. I'm wearing one of them, and it's got his hair all over it. Here, sorry, I'll put you down. We got the new I'm Fine stitching, and the embroidering on this is so cool. And the back, wait for it. Look at the back. Oh my God. Look at Kevin, it's you. He's like, what? It's so sick. And then we got this guy. Kevin, look. He wants to eat this thing so bad, but I've been waiting to show you guys. We have a Kevin plushie. It's you. Look, it's you. Also, we have Ace stuff, my first cow ever. Look at him. He's so sweet and cute. We had this, literally the comfiest sweater I've ever put on my body. Go grab that too. But we have these items and many, many more for you guys to go check out. So go grab it now while supplies last. And you can get my new collection 20% off by clicking the link down below. And it's only available to people who shop through the YouTube shopping feature, so make sure you're doing that as well. But you gotta click fast because you're only gonna get this deal from now until October 30th, so make sure to go check it out down below. And only while supplies last, so you gotta be fast. But I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate your support on the auto launches. It's been so fun to design these for you guys and to make the plushies too. I love them so much. So I hope you guys enjoy the new Kevin auto launch, and let's get back to the video. Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and murder, and TikTok. Of all things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick, beautiful, intellectual... Let me try that again. And I know you do too, you sick, beautiful, intellectual-minded freak. There we go, much better. And we are talking about just that, specifically TikTok and murder. I'm going to tell you 3 stories about 3 TikTokers that went from dancing behind their phones to dancing in jail cells. All 3 of these stories are vastly different and very interesting to say the least. One of them happened only a couple weeks ago. So let's unbuckle our seatbelts, go Mach 5 down the highway, slam on the brakes, and bust through this windshield and into these TikTok crime cases together. Hold up, I have a very cool announcement, and that is that I, along with Selena Spooky Boo, am in Sam and Colby's Hell Week this October. So make sure to go check that out at Sam and Colby's page.
And I'll see you there.
And one of the reasons I'm telling you about this is because we're both partnering with Dragon City. Thank you to Dragon City for sponsoring this video. And Sam and Colby and myself and Selena Spooky Boo are going to be ghost hunting a haunted school that they bought. So in celebration of that, Dragon City has created a custom haunted professor dragon. After releasing the Call Me Chris dragon and the Call Me Chris pin decoration, Dragon City also brings you the new Autumn Chris dragon. Don't be fooled though. This dragon has more than just a fresh outfit. She also has new cool elements that you'll love. With Dragon City, you can create your own dragon empire by collecting, hatching, and evolving over 1,000 unique dragons, including dragons of your favorite YouTubers, like myself. Construct and customize your dream city with magical habitats, buildings, and decorations. Unleash powerful dragon skills and strategies to conquer challenging quests and events. And join the vibrant community of players and collaborate in alliances to unlock exclusive rewards. And Dragon City has over 450 million installs. That's a lot of dragons, and I'm here for it. So embark on an adventure filled with enchanting quests, ancient legends, and mythical creatures. So download Dragon City by clicking the link in the description below, or scan the QR code to get the Call Me Chris pin, food, gold, and zombie flame dragon instantly. So don't waste the opportunity to play with my custom dragons and download Dragon City today. And remember, this is a limited time offer. And also, don't forget to check out my video with Sam and Colby on Sam and Colby's channel during Hell Week. Now let's get back to the video. We're gonna be starting out with Claire Miller. It was the kind of night where everything felt eerily calm, where the silence in the suburbs was almost stifling. Underneath that stillness, in a modest home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Claire Miller was about to make a phone call that would shatter that serenity forever. Her voice, trembling and panicked, echoed through the phone as she spoke to the 911 dispatcher. "I killed my sister." And the clock read 1:08 a.m. So let's talk about Claire's backstory. Claire Miller was just like any other teenager in many ways. 14 years old, a sophomore in high school, and glued to her phone as you do. And she found solace in the world of TikTok. What a loser. Just kidding. Under the name Spirit and Such Consulting, she had cultivated a following in the tens of thousands, posting lip syncs, quirky dance routines, and videos that showcased a girl who, on the surface, appeared carefree and playful. But the screen concealed what lay behind her smiling selfies and perfectly timed TikTok trends. And her family was unique to say the least. Her sister, Helen, had cerebral palsy and was bound to a wheelchair. Helen required constant care, and as a result, much of the family's time and energy revolved around her. Claire, while loving her sister, often found herself in the background. Her role as the able-bodied sibling felt at times like a supporting character in somebody else's life. A life dominated by caregiving and silent sacrifices. And Helen was 19 years old at the time. And Claire's TikTok was her escape. It was her platform and her space to be seen, to be the center of attention. Although she did sometimes put her sister in her TikToks, and people really loved that as well. So even then, some of the spotlight was being taken away from Claire. But TikTok still gave her a sense of validation that she didn't feel at home. But the more time Claire spent on TikTok, the further she drifted from people around her. Her parents noticed a big change in her behavior. She became withdrawal, her moods unpredictable. Sounds like just a typical teenage girl to me, personally. But there were whispers in her family about her self-isolation. But Claire kind of kept her feelings bottled up and just pushed them aside and didn't really tell anybody about anything. And to forget everything, she would just hit the record on her phone. And to her growing number of followers, Claire just seemed like any other teen navigating the complexities of adolescence. But as her online persona grew brighter, her real-world self began to fade. Underneath the lighthearted TikToks was a girl who felt increasingly alone, suffocated with the weight of her role in her family and her own internal turmoil. And in the months leading up to the incident, Claire's TikTok posts became stranger and more cryptic. Some of her videos hinted a deeper emotional struggle, her playful dance routines interrupted by dark, almost haunting lyrics, and her followers did comment on it. But most just brush it aside as like a typical teenage angst, which I see on TikTok all the time. It's very hard to spot, who's angsty and who's gonna murder one of their family members. But the true depths of pain and anger would only become evident later on the night of February 22nd, 2021 to be specific. So on that night, Claire was feeling very restless, haunted by nightmares and weird visions of people talking to her in her sleep, almost like demons of sorts that she claims. And that would cause her to get up in the middle of the night and walk over to her sister's room, Helen, who was peacefully sleeping in her bedroom. And no one knows exactly what was racing through Claire's mind in those moments before she picked up the knife. No one can truly understand the exact emotions that twisted through her as she stood over her sleeping sister. Was it anger? Was it jealousy or desperation? We don't know, and we probably won't ever know. But in a flash of violence, Claire's world would change forever. She would bring down the knife on her sister, who was still sleeping in her wheelchair, and she would stab her to death. And after the attack, Claire just stood there, breathless. Her body moved on almost an autopilot as she grabbed the phone and dialed 911. And her voice cracked as she told the dispatcher the unthinkable: "I killed my sister." And there was no attempt to flee, no grand cover-up, just a chilling confession and desperate plea for help. And when the police arrived, Claire was outside, her hands and clothes wet with her own sister's blood. And her face was just masked with shock, as though she herself couldn't fully comprehend what she had just done. And inside the house, officers found Helen deceased. It was much too late to save her life, unfortunately. And news of the murder quickly spread, drawing attention from across the nation. Claire Miller wasn't just any teenager, she was a TikTok personality. Her account, Spirits and Such Consulting, had grown in the aftermath of the crime as well, with thousands more flocking to her page, which is so searching for answers in her videos. But even her following count grew like enormously, which is strange. But the comment sections were flooded with disbelief, speculation, and just morbid curiosity. How could a girl who had posted dance videos, harmless dance videos and TikTok trends, be capable of such violence, and at such a young age as well? And Claire's arrest and trial became a media spectacle, not just because of the brutality of the crime, but because of the complexity of her mental state during the crime. She was only 14 years old, but was being charged as an adult under Pennsylvania law, which is not common.
She is being charged as an adult with homicide. Her arraignment is soon at a local district justice office.
So the courtroom was just filled with tension that weighed on everyone who watched the proceedings unfold. And Claire's defense team argued that she was mentally ill, suffering from severe psychological distress that clouded her judgment of the night of the murder. But psychiatrists would examine her, combing through her mind for answers, but the results were inconclusive. While it was clear she was deeply disturbed, she wasn't considered legally insane at the time of the crime. And as the defense lawyer pushed for her case to be transferred to juvenile court, Claire would just sit quietly, her face in a blank slate, as if the enormity of her actions hadn't fully sunk in. But despite the psychological evaluations and countless court hearings, the motive behind Claire's actions remained murky. She never provided a clear reason for why she had killed Helen, her sister. And any details from her mental health evaluations were kept private, leaving the public just to speculate on their own. So was it the strain of caring for her sister, the pressure of adolescence compounded by TikTok fame, or something even deeper hidden beneath the layers of emotional trauma? Again, we'll probably never know. So in March of 2023, Claire Miller pleaded guilty to third-degree murder. And the court determined while she was mentally ill, she was not legally insane. So she was sentenced to a prison term ranging from 12 and a half to 40 years. And her TikTok account, once a source of pride and validation, had been removed from the platform, but not before it had amassed a larger following in the wake of the tragedy. And this raised unsettling questions about the role social media played in her life and the lives of countless other teens navigating their formative years under the scrutiny of a virtual audience. And Claire would also petition to have her case moved to juvenile court, but it was declined in July of 2022. But yeah, I mean, that's the story of Claire Miller, and it's so devastating and sad, and it's kind of unnerving not to know exactly why it happened. I mean, clearly she was disturbed and not in her right mind, but I don't know. It's nightmare fuel. But that brings us to our next TikToker, Maryann Snow. So the living room was warm, a soft glow from the TV flickering across the faces of Helen Hastings and Maryann Snow. Around them, laughter filled the air as a group of friends gathered on a lazy Houston evening, watching an episode of Gotham. Bottles of vodka and Dr. Pepper sat half empty on the table, mixing with the faint scent of cigarette smoke in the air. The camaraderie was palpable, the kind only found in close-knit circles of young adults who shared a love for the same odd, dark worlds, anime, cosplay, and the bizarre characters of video games. And Maryann, known online to thousands as Yondir Freak or Snow the Salt Queen, was the undeniable star of the room. Draped in her usual cosplay-inspired clothing, she gestured excitedly at the TV and said, "I've got a gun like that." And she would laugh drunkenly. The others laughed too, none of them realizing that what began as a joke would soon turn into a nightmare. And Helen Hastings was one of the friends in the room with Maryann. Helen, at the time, was 18 years old and brimming with potential. She was on her break from freshman year at Oberlin College, a brilliant line caught between the disciplines of art, psychology, and neurobiology. Helen truly had a future that was boundless, and her passion for creativity stretched beyond the classroom, spilling into the colorful, chaotic world of cosplay. And it was here in the subculture where people became someone or something else that Helen found an outlet for her imagination and a community that welcomed her in all her uniqueness. And among her friends in Houston, Maryann was one of the closest. And despite the 5-year age gap, their shared love of cosplay, dark humor, and anime bonded them. And Maryann had become somewhat of an online sensation, amassing thousands of followers on TikTok for her portrayal of intricate, often sinister characters, and Helen admired that about her. But beyond the cosplay costumes and playful online personas, Helen faced her own battles. Behind the bright smile and creative mind, she struggled with anxiety and depression. And cosplay offered her that escape, but sometimes sometimes even the costumes couldn't keep that darkness at bay. And for Maryann, cosplay was more than just a hobby. It was a way to express parts of herself that otherwise felt disconnected. And her online persona, Yondir Freak, was infamous for embracing characters who walked the line between innocence and malevolence. One of her most notable cosplays was Junko Enoshima, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, a character from the game Danganronpa, also sorry if I'm saying that wrong, a villain with a penchant for chaos, danger, and manipulation. And the blurred line between Maryann's online identity and her real self was becoming more apparent to those around her. The characters she embodies were often really dark, chaotic figures, and there were moments when her friends wondered if Snow knew where the act ended and where her true self began. She was going method with it, a little too method with it. But no one really dared speak about it. Everybody kind of walked on eggshells around her because of her internet fame. And then the night of January 17th, 2021 would come around. And it started like any other casual night among friends. Helen and Maryann, along with a few other friends, gathered at Snow's place, watching Gotham and sipping vodka with Dr. Pepper. Gross. And the show's dark, moody themes were a perfect backdrop to their shared love of sinister characters. And as the night wore on, the alcohol flowed more freely. That's never good. And the group naturally became rowdier. And at some point, the conversation shifted to props. And Maryann, excited by the gun used in the show, mentioned that she had a real firearm, one that her ex-boyfriend had left behind. But the gun wasn't loaded. She assured her friends that he had removed the magazine. Not People's Magazine or something like that. There's a thing that goes in the gun that has bullets in it. She said it was removed. So there was no danger and no reason to worry. So Snow left the room and returned moments later with the gun in her hands. The others laughed nervously as Snow aimed it playfully at all of her friends. It's just the biggest no-no in the world. But she was mimicking the characters on the TV show. And Helen, always one for adventure, joked along, with the rest reportedly saying, "Ooh, do me next, do me next." Her words were filled with humor, the kind that made sense in the context of the night. Friends just playing pretend, just like in their cosplays. But the next moment wasn't pretend, because when Snow pulled the trigger, a deafening crack would split the air, and the laughter would die immediately. A single bullet, unseen but very, very real, was chambered in the gun, and it struck Helen in the head, and she would collapse to the floor immediately. And the room would turn into cold and shock. The laughter and joking dissipated in an instant and was replaced with sound of frantic shouts, hands trembling as they tried to stop the bleeding in Helen's head. Someone would actually grab a stuffed animal and try to stop the bleeding, but unfortunately, it was futile. And as panic just swept the room, someone fumbled on their phone and dialed 911, their voice barely audible through the sobs. And Maryann Snow just stood frozen, her face masked with disbelief. And she would say, "I thought it wasn't loaded." And she just kept repeating this over and over, as though the words could somehow undo what just happened. It just makes me sick. Paramedics would arrive within minutes, rushing Helen to the hospital, where she was placed on life support. And for 2 days, her family and friends held on to hope, praying for a miracle. But on January 19th, 2021, after doctors confirmed there was no chance of recovery, Helen was removed from life support and she was deceased. And in the weeks that followed, Maryann would be charged with manslaughter. And the prosecution argued that Snow had acted recklessly, handling a deadly weapon under the influence, without checking if it was truly safe, which is 100% true and unacceptable. And unacceptable. And Maryann's defense was rooted in the idea that it was an accident and it was a tragic mistake, which we all would like to assume that that is the case, and I'm sure it is. She had been told that the gun was unloaded, and she had no intention of harming her friend. And as the case unfolded, questions of negligence and responsibility filled the courtroom. Could someone be held accountable for such a horrific accident when they truly believed there was no danger? Where did the line between innocent mistake and criminal behavior fall? And for her part, Maryann showed deep, deep remorse, cooperating fully with the law enforcement. But the case was far from simple, and as of the last report, Snow had not yet entered a formal plea. And the legal battle ahead was murky, as it often is in cases of accidental death. And in the aftermath of Helen's death, Maryann's online persona came under intense scrutiny. Known for embodying dark, villainous characters, her followers now questioned if the line between Snow's real life and her cosplays had been blurred beyond recognition. She continued to post online though, and her TikTok and Instagram pages were still active. But the content struck many as inappropriate given the gravity of the situation, which is fair. Read the room. pretty easy. Videos portraying violent themes and dark humor that once felt like an extension of her cosplay now seemed very chilling, raising ethical questions about the behavior of influencers in the wake of tragedy. Like, was she grieving or hiding behind her online identity to avoid facing reality of what happened? I don't know. And the cosplay community was just like split in half after this happened. Some members expressed sorrow, standing by Snow, understanding that it had been an accident, and others were less forgiving, seeing the accident as a failure of responsibility, which, I mean, you know, it's both, in my opinion. So Oliver Snow has been free on bond since the manslaughter charge on January 18th, 2021. And they were indicted by Harris County grand jury on second-degree murder felony manslaughter charge in April 2021 and remained free on bail pending trial. And despite the events that occurred, like I said, she remained active on TikTok until they made their account private in response to all the backlash in the cosplay community. And upon their return to Instagram, cosplaying communities don't seem to take their return too lightly there either. A lot of people are seeing it as like disrespect. And Oliver Snow was allowed to post bail and was ordered to stay in the state afterwards. However, court records indicate that Oliver Snow violated the terms of their bond throughout August of that year, missing a pretrial date related to the case, violating curfew, and allowing the battery on the GPS tracking device on her to die. Nevertheless, the influencer appears to have been permitted to remain within the state as they continued to create online content, even after everything that happened. So yeah, that one is like a toss-up. Like, obviously it's, I mean, you'd hope that it was just a horrible accident, but the way that they acted afterwards was strange, I guess. But I don't know, like, everyone acts different after tragedy. Some people just want to go through their lives like nothing ever happened, and everybody deals with it differently. So I'm not here to judge or anything like that. I'm just kind of saying the story. But yeah, that one's kind of still up in the air. But that brings us to our final one, which has been extremely recently, and that is Maryann Thomas, aka Mr. Prada. So the night was too quiet for a city like Baton Rouge, and yet the sound of rubber soles dragging across a concrete floor echoed in the dimly lit hallway of Maryann Thomas's apartment building. His hands, slick with sweat, struggled to grip the corners of the heavy tarp that concealed the lifeless form inside. His breath came in short, frantic bursts. His eyes darted to the stairwell, then back to the mess he had made. He hadn't planned for this. Not tonight, not like this. But nothing had gone according to plan since he became Mr. Prada. So Maryann Thomas never set out to be famous, at least not famous like this. Growing up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, he was just another young man with dreams of making it out, of being seen, or of being somebody. His family loved him. Sure, but love wasn't enough to fill the gnawing void inside of him. The same void that pushed him to upload his first TikTok video. And the platform was perfect for him. Quick, effortless, and flashy. His early content was simple. Recreations of trending challenges, meme dances, and lip syncs. And his profile grew steadily. And so did the praise. Maryann became Mr. Prada. The nickname, an ironic twist. He had never owned anything from Prada, but his online persona oozed a confidence that screamed luxury. And it wasn't long before people started to recognize him on the street, greeting him with laughter and inside jokes from his videos. But as his follower count skyrocketed, so did the pressure to keep producing. And the love was addictive, but fleeting as well. His new fans wanted more and demanded more. One viral video wasn't enough. They wanted daily doses of Mr. Prada, fresh content, wittier jokes, edgier stunts. And when the content wasn't new enough, the trolls would come out. The trolls just up the side of the bridge. And the turning point came when well-known TikToker called him out for stealing his content. And the video went viral. More viral than any of his. And a side-by-side comparison of one of Maryann's popular posts next to the original's creator's work was mass spread. And it was bad. It was literally the exact same. And Maryann tried to laugh it off. Tried to act like it didn't matter. He posted a video of himself looking smug, declaring, "Mr. Prada, unbothered. Y'all still watching me?" And his fans laughed and the views rolled in. But behind the scenes, the comments were cutting deeper. Words like fake, unoriginal, copycat flooded his notifications. And the memes mocking his work ethic spread faster than his own videos. And with each hateful comment, something inside Terrion shifted. His once carefree smile turned into something darker and something a lot more desperate. The fame he had once craved now felt like a noose tightening around his neck. And in a last-ditch effort to reinvent himself, he posted increasingly erratic content. He shaved his head on camera, claimed he was done with TikTok, only to return hours later. Then came the cryptic videos. Shots of his empty apartment, shadows flickering in the corners, and the infamous post would later come back to haunt him. Practicing for my mugshot. His audience was amused by it, and no one really took him seriously, when they probably should have. So Terrion's transformation was almost complete, though no one could have guessed where he was headed. The lines between his TikTok persona and his real life started to get blurred, the attention both feeding and poisoning him. He wasn't Mr. Prada anymore, not even Terrion Thomas. He was a mess of insecurities, ego, anger, and barely held together by the flickering light of his phone screen. So it was the evening of September 28th, 2024, and the air outside Terrion's apartment was thick with humidity, a suffocating weight that pressed against the windows. And inside, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. And Terrion paced to the floor, the sound of his footsteps quickening with each turn. And then there was a knock at the door. William Nicholas Abraham had just arrived. What brought him there that night was a mystery, perhaps an old grudge, perhaps something more sinister. Whatever the reason, William's presence in Terrion's apartment would soon take a deadly turn. Terrion had grown increasingly paranoid in the weeks leading up to the murder. Every glance from a stranger, every whisper felt like a threat. His online persona had consumed him, and now, offline, he didn't know who he could trust. He had lost friends, distanced himself from family, and spent more and more time locked in his apartment, where the walls seemed to close in a little tighter each day. And William entered that night without a struggle. At first, their conversation was strained but civil. They talked about TikTok and the pressures of maintaining a brand, but as the night wore on, something shifted. Maybe it was the lingering tension, or maybe it was the way William looked at him, like he was just another washed-up TikToker waiting to be forgotten. I've gotten that look before. But the details of the murder remained fuzzy, obscured by Terrion's frantic, broken recollection. But what is clear is that, in a fit of rage, Terrion snapped. The apartment's walls bore witness to the struggle. Bloodstains splattering across the stark white paint, and William's body laid crumpled on the floor, lifeless. And the quiet that followed was deafening. Terrion stood over William, his chest heaving, blood staining his hands, and his mind just raced, replaying the scenes in slow motion in his head. But there was really no making sense of it. And Terrion's next moves were completely fueled by panic. He would drag William's body across the floor, leaving a blood trail in his wake. And he grabbed a tarp. Where he found it, he said he couldn't remember, and he tried to wrap the body as fast as he could with his hands shaking. He had no plan, no strategy, only a desperate need to do what needed to be done. And security footage would later capture him dragging the body down the stairs. His movements were very erratic as he was teetering on the edge of collapse. He dumped the body into William's car and drove off into the night, not knowing where he was going, just knowing he had to get away. And news would break the next morning. TikTok star Mr. Prada wanted for murder, and social media exploded. Fans couldn't believe, some claimed it was a hoax, and others were quick to vilify him. And Terrion was already on the run, driving aimlessly through the city. His mind was a chaotic mess of fear and delusion. And he switched cars somewhere along the way, trying to cover his tracks, but it was too late, and the authorities were closing in. And Terrion's arrest in Dallas, Texas was swift and without drama. When the police found him, he was hunched over in the front seat, eyes vacant and hands trembling. And the man who had once basked in the limelight of TikTok fame now looked hollow. And as they cuffed him, Terrion didn't resist. He had nothing left to fight for. The fame, the followers, the views, none of it really mattered anymore. And his final viral moment would be his mugshot. And the world would remember him as not Mr. Prada, but as a killer. But let's talk about who Dr. Abraham is, because I think that is interesting and important as well. So Abraham, the person that Mr. Prada had murdered, was a familiar face in Baton Rouge, having appeared on cable television, and was a mental health therapist. But there was a former accusation of a patient. In 2015, Abraham was accused of SAing an 11-year-old boy during a counseling session, WAFB reported. And the boy was allegedly so upset after the session that he told his family he never wanted to see Abraham again. And during the session with a new counselor, the boy told his new counselor about the alleged SA by Abraham. And Abraham was arrested at the time and booked into the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison, where he was later released after posting bail of $25,000, as records show. However, prosecutors didn't bring the case to trial. And it would be said, while there was probable cause for an arrest, my office had to determine if the evidence supported our burden at trial, which is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. District Attorney Hiller Moore told WAFB. This matter was under review by my office for approximately 2 years. After considering all the evidence, the best interest of the child, and the lack of any inculpatory statements by the arrestee, we declined to institute formal charges. Ambo represented Abraham in the 2015 case and said Thomas was not the alleged victim in the case. It's unequivocally not him, Ambo would tell WAFB. And the relationship between Thomas and Abraham, as well as a motive, are still under investigation. Officials say that they do not believe Thomas was an actual client of the victim, which is interesting. Like, why would they meet up? They didn't know each other at all. He went to his house, they had a discussion of what seemed to be about his mental health, but he wasn't a client at all. So like, how did they meet? Did Thomas know somebody that may have been essayed by this person and acted out against that? Or was it just a freak incident? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of questions. And as of October 8th, 2024, charges have been upgraded against Terrian. 20-year-old Thomas was originally charged with second-degree murder and obstruction of justice in the death of Dr. Nick Abraham, who was 69 at the time. And the charge would be upgraded to first-degree murder under Louisiana law that allows the more serious charge when the offender has the specific intent to kill or inflict great bodily harm upon a victim who is under the age of 12 or 65 years age or older. What? Who is under the age of 12 or 65 years of age or older. Interesting. So that in between them, it's not? That's very strange. So if you're in between that, you're like second degree? That's interesting. I don't understand that, but that's what news outlets reported. And the new charge makes the case eligible for the death penalty in the event of an actual conviction, and should prosecutors decide to pursue that case strategy. And as the world watched Terrian's fall from grace, social media was abuzz with hot takes and conspiracy theories. Some said the fame had driven him mad. Others claimed it was all a setup, that Terrian was totally innocent, but in the court of public opinion, he was already guilty. And the TikTok persona he had so carefully crafted had become his undoing. His rise had been meteoric, but his fall was even swifter, leaving behind a trail of blood, lies, and broken dreams. So that is all we have on Maryann Thomas. Interested to see where that case goes and everything. There's a lot of questions. It's very strange, especially it's like such a young age to just like snap like that on supposedly someone you don't know. It's just like not that common, and to have no motive is so strange as well. So I don't know. I'm interested to hear more about the case, but I mean, man, it's a crazy world out there. Everybody gotta stay safe, and I mean, keep your mental health in check. That is the most important thing. That is the most important thing. If you're on TikTok, if you're on YouTube, if you're on anything, just make sure to take a step back. Go touch some grass, okay? Get off here, or take me with you outside. Go touch some grass, all right? And have a snack. But I hope you enjoyed hearing about all these cases. Very interesting. I think if you have any other cases, let me know down below. I always read the comments. I always like them. Thank you again to Dragon City for sponsoring this video. Download Dragon City by clicking the link in the description below, or scan the QR code to get the Call Me Chris pin, food, gold, and zombie flame dragon instantly. So don't waste the opportunity to play with my custom dragons and download Dragon City today. And remember, this is a limited time offer. And yeah, I will see your beautiful face in the next video. All right? Bye.